having the background in design and knowing, okay, when I was a commercial, like practicing as a commercial interior designer, these are the things that I really looked for in a rep, and these are the things that were so helpful for me. And now that I'm on the other side, I want to be that for designers because they are tugged in a million different directions every day. There's so much to do. You're driven by deadlines, and sometimes, heaven forbid, those deadlines overlap and you're stressed out of your mind.
Yeah.
So just to come alongside designers and say, I know how you feel, and please let me help. I want to take this off your plate.
Welcome to the South Cypress Podcast, where we talk to members of the design community about their stories, knowledge, and expertise. I'm your host, Brandon White. Today I'm talking with Liz Hunsicker. Liz is here in Birmingham and worked with KPS for almost 7 years. She's currently the Territory Sales Manager for Haworth and also serves as the VP of Advocacy and Diversity for IIDA Alabama. This is a great episode. Liz gave us an update on IIDA Advocacy and Diversity. She talked through the transition from working with a design firm to being a rep. She gave a few tips for working with reps if you're a designer, some best practices for reps based on her experience on the other side of things, and also talks about the importance of community in the design space. This was a really fun episode, and I'm excited for you to hear it. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to the South Cypress Podcast. Really excited to talk with Liz today. I met Liz when she was working with KPS. She was there for about 7 years, I think, in their Birmingham office, and is currently the Territory Sales Manager for Haworth. And I had the opportunity to hear Liz at IIDA Student Day. I think it was last year. She was one of the panel speakers, and a question came up about being a designer and then transitioning to being a rep, which obviously Liz is still a designer, but she's just working in a sales capacity now. And just loved hearing her talk about that. And I thought that would be something that other folks were interested in hearing about. In addition to all that, Liz is also recently the VP of Advocacy and Diversity for IIDA Alabama as well. And so we're honored to have you, Liz. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Of course. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome. I talked about a lot of stuff that you have going on, but probably the busiest or the most significant thing is you just had a baby recently. So how's Ren doing?
It turns out babies change your life just a little bit.
They do. Yeah.
Yes, they do. She is doing great. She is just over 3 months now. And so many people told me once you hit the 3-month mark, it gets a lot more fun. And I was hoping that would be true. Not that the first 3 months weren't fun, but they're
It's
a little
tough.
bit more difficult. And she's just started smiling all the time, and she's learning to laugh now. And she's just so fun. She's doing great. So we're very thankful.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're right there with you. Wells is our little boy, and we've got an almost 4-year-old little girl named Audrey, and then Wells is, I think, 7 weeks today, and so he's we're right there in the thick of it. Yeah, but it's good though. So, but if you hear somebody playing in the background, it's because my 4-year-old is outside in the yard right now. So if she gets a little loud, that's why. But hopefully everybody is used to that in 2023.
Yes, so. I think so. It's part of it these days.
Yep. But yeah, so with IIDA, the board just recently transitioned, right?
That's correct. Yes. So I joined the board back in 2021 as the VP of Advocacy and Diversity, and then I stayed on for a second term. So
okay, awesome.
Yes,
I didn't realize.
I'll be starting year 3.
Okay, that's awesome. How's that been going? Anything new going on with IIDA or with your position in particular?
Yes, there are a lot of great things happening across the country as it relates to advocacy, which I'm very excited about. The reason I wanted to take this position is because, as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people don't know what interior designers actually do, and it can be extremely frustrating when you're working your tail off and people think you're just picking out pillows all day. So when they approached me about the position a couple years ago, I was like, if there's one position on the board I'm going to do, it's this one. And even just over the last 2 years, as I've served in this position, there have been several states who have gotten legislation in place, and that's only continuing. There's a ton of momentum right now, which is a great thing for our industry. And thankfully, Alabama was actually the first state to have legislation for interior design. And
Really?
yes, I would say we've definitely got some room for improvement, but I'm proud that we can say that we were the first and that we're actively working to improve even the regulations that are in place now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Proud of Alabama for being the first one.
I know.
That's great.
I know. Let's
Uh,
go. We're
what
not
was
often the first state.
So yeah, out of those changes that Alabama had made and some of the regulations that they had put in place, what were some of the specific ones for somebody like me that may not be totally read into the situation there?
Yes. So I'll give you a quick history lesson here on our state. So back in, it was 1982, actually, Alabama was the first state to pass a Title Act for registration of interior designers. So basically, if you were a registered interior designer, you could call yourself that as part of the Title Act. And that's specific only to those who are registered. And then fast forward to 2000 and let's see, I think it was, or sorry, it was 1996 actually. We tried to get a Practice Act introduced, but it did not pass. And then fast forward to 2010, the Practice Act did pass. So that allowed for the use of the term registered interior designer for individuals who have passed the NCIDQ and have registered with the state. So if there is no registration in a state, which there are still several states who don't have registration, then you can pretty much call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, and it doesn't matter, quote unquote, according to the state, even though it does professionally. But for the states who do have Practice Act and or Title Act, then you can say, yes, I'm a registered interior designer, and you, who maybe are actually an interior decorator, can't call yourself that because you did not pass the NCIDQ and register with the state. And there are different regulations depending on what state you're in, but for the state of Alabama, the way it stands right now is if you're a registered interior designer, you can seal drawings for a permit of up to 5,000 square feet, but that's for non-assembly occupancy. So back in 2010, when that was passed, that was a big deal. I mean, it was a huge deal. And
I bet.
yeah, and we're still happy that that's in place. However, we are now hoping that we can have registered interior designers seal drawings for spaces larger than 5,000 square feet and spaces that could include assembly. However, it's a quite the task. So there's a lot that goes into it. And back in 2010, when that passed, there were several people who worked countless hours to make that happen. So it's not just a thing that happens overnight.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, nothing regulatory happens fast. That's just not in the cards. I mean, this is
Right.
probably a dumb question, but when you say assembly, what does that mean?
So there are different occupancy types for buildings. So corporate spaces would be business.
Yeah.
Assembly space, it can mean a bunch of different things, but that would include like large meeting areas. For example, like if you have a large training room or seminar room or a gym, something like that, that could qualify as an assembly space.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting.
So the exiting is a little bit more complicated since it hosts so many people. And so that is why they kind of excluded that from what we conceal.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had this is all new information for me. As somebody that's not a designer but just works on the material side of things, that I hear somebody like you, and I'm like, yeah, I have a lot to learn about all this stuff.
Well, I do too, and I'm still learning, and that's why I love this position. And I hope that I haven't misinterpreted or misquoted anything what I've just
No,
said.
I'm sure that you haven't.
But
Yeah. It sounds
yeah,
like you're
there's a
really
lot to it.
knowledgeable and read up on all this stuff. So
Well, I try to be with the role I'm in. It's kind of important. So,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
exactly.
When did the board transition? Was it last month?
It was in June, I believe. I was on maternity leave, so I was not there for the official transition, but it would have been me transitioning myself to myself. So it
Yeah,
kind of worked
pretty
out.
easy transition for you. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Well,
Yes.
good. Well, congratulations on that again. I know everybody's glad
Yep.
to still have you in that role. So,
Thanks. Yes, I'm happy to still be in the role. Glad that they let me.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, so backing up a little bit, when was it that you first knew that you wanted to be an interior designer? How did that start?
So it's hilarious to me. I don't know how or why I knew, but when I was a little girl, I decided I wanted to be an interior designer. If I were to guess, I would say I was watching HGTV, which I don't like admitting that because it's such an inaccurate picture of what interior designers do.
But everybody was watching HGTV when we were kids, and
Yes.
still I was at I went to a doctor's appointment with Catherine the other day and we were sitting there in the waiting room and
Uh-huh.
HGTV in every waiting room at the
Yeah.
hospital was like that. So
It's certainly entertaining. So I
yeah,
understand why people enjoy it.
yeah, it'll be school teacher and police officer with a $3 million house budget,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You're like, wait, what?
yeah,
How can you afford this? And how
yeah,
are your construction costs so low? This makes
yeah,
no sense.
yeah, ten thousand
Yeah.
dollars new roof,
Yes.
everything. Yeah,
Yes, it's crazy. But anyway, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do interior design, and I was really thankful for that because I didn't go through the whole, oh no, I'm going to college, what am I going to study crisis that I feel like so many people do. And I went to University of Missouri, started their architectural studies program as a freshman and carried through till my senior year. And the more I learned about it, the more I just loved it. And even graduating and going working for architecture firms, I've just continued to fall in love with interior design and what interior designers do.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, so after school, what brought you to Birmingham?
So I worked in St. Louis for a short period. That's where I'm from originally.
Okay.
And then my husband John and I got married. He had gone to Samford University for undergrad and he knew he wanted to go to med school. So we got married, moved down to Birmingham because he was hoping he would get into UAB for med school. And he took about 3 years off and then started at UAB med school. And now he is a resident at UAB. So that's really the path that got me down here.
Yeah, it's a great place to be in med school from what I hear.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We have had such a great experience. I mean, it's an amazing program.
Yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
not easy. But
Yeah, that's what I hear. But once you're done,
yeah.
it's good. Yeah, learn a
Yes.
lot. So that's
Yes. It's a
well.
gift.
While you were at KPS, what sort of projects were you typically working on? Because I know KPS does a whole lot of different things. So,
Yes, they have a wide variety of project types, which is part of why I loved working there. I ended up primarily focusing on corporate. I also did some churches, some education, both or elementary school and higher ed. But corporate was really my main focus and what I would say I've tried to become quote unquote an expert on.
yeah, yeah.
Although I had a long way to go. It was yeah, my primary focus.
Yeah. And as you, and I'm skipping some steps here, but as you started with Haworth, are you focusing on corporate jobs there as well? Or is it are there other markets that you serve? What's that like?
Yes. So I naturally gravitate toward corporate just because I have experience in it. But I've done a lot of government projects with Haworth as well as healthcare and education. So,
Okay.
and healthcare has been a really fun market to get into because just with John being in healthcare, I hear so much about it. I just didn't get to do that type of work previously. So I've really enjoyed seeing that side of things as well.
Yeah. And there's a lot to learn with healthcare. There's just so
So much.
much that goes into it that, you just wouldn't know otherwise. It's just kind of its own thing. And so
Right.
I enjoy, there's a lot of projects that we help with, but that's one of them that I enjoy a lot as well. So
Yes. And it truly makes such an impact on the nurses, the physicians, the patients. I mean, what they're doing is such hard work. So to feel like you are playing a small role and making their jobs a little bit easier it's a good feeling.
yeah. Yeah, we had wells, or my wife had wells at Grandview, and
Mhm.
that hospital, I mean, they just did such a phenomenal job on the
Yes, it's
design work.
beautiful.
Yeah, and it
Hmm.
it legitimately does make a big difference if, if you've never been there before, just simple things like having the big window in out the front
Hmm.
so you can understand where you are in the hospital and things like that. And
Yeah.
it was just funny after helping with a bunch of healthcare projects to be a patient for a little, or not a patient, but have two
Yes,
patients for a little while.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like this stuff really does matter and it
Oh
really
yeah.
helps. Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, so how's well, I guess to start with, what, as you were doing mainly design work at KPS, what was prompting you to think, okay, maybe I should transition into being a rep at this point?
Yes. So my dad is in sales. So I grew up around sales. My brother and my uncle and my grandpa were also in sales. My brother still is. And
You
so
didn't
I
have a
was,
chance.
I know, I know, I was surrounded by it. And I had several professors in college say, if you ever want to be a rep, I think you'd be really good at it. So I just kind of had it in the back of my mind and knew that I definitely wanted to graduate, go get my experience, take the NCIDQ, become a registered interior designer, pass lead, all of those things. And then from there, just say if the right opportunity comes up, maybe I'll consider it. But I really loved what I was doing. So I was in no way just longing for the day when I would go into sales. It was just like, if it happens, it happens. And if it's the right thing, then it'll fall into place. So that was kind of my approach with it.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. And that you transitioned to working with Haworth, what, about a year ago now? Is that right?
Yes, almost exactly. My first day was August 20th. So it's August
Okay.
17th today.
Yeah, yeah, almost to the day. That's
Yeah.
cool. Well, what's the transition been like? How's it been being with Haworth?
It has been really good. Haworth as a company is just incredible. I very much so align with their values and their goals and mission, and that's the top priority for me with any job that I'm in. So that has made the transition a lot more smooth. And I would just say too, having the background in design and knowing, okay, when I was a commercial, like practicing as a commercial interior designer, these are the things that I really looked for in a rep, and these are the things that were so helpful for me. And now that I'm on the other side, I want to be that for designers because they are tugged in a million different directions every day. There's so much to do. You're driven by deadlines, and sometimes, heaven forbid, those deadlines overlap and you're stressed out of your mind.
Yeah.
So just to come alongside designers and say, I know how you feel and please let me help. I want to take this off your plate has been great. I mean, that's my favorite part of the job. And so that's helped a lot with the transition. And there are certainly days where I miss design. So, that's part of it too. But I think just Hayworth being so welcoming and again being the great company that it is, it's been overall a smooth transition.
Yeah. As you were going into it, what were some of those do's and don'ts that when you were thinking of, I definitely want to be like this as a rep, and I definitely don't want to be like this? What were some of the, just some of the specifics there that you were thinking of?
So the number one don't that pops into my mind is I don't want to be the rep that just drops in unannounced and tries to talk to a designer when he or she is on a deadline.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt like such a jerk whenever a rep would pop in and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I've got to get this turned in by 5 or whatever. So That's the number one don't that pops into my head. And yeah, and also just don't forget to be conscious of billable hours and again the demands that they're under every day. Not that reps aren't a priority, but
Yeah,
deadlines
but
certainly come
at
first.
the end of the day, as a designer, you could spend all of your time hanging out with sales reps. I
You
mean,
could.
you've
Yes.
got literally hundreds of people that are knocking on the door,
Oh yeah.
hey, how do I get in front of your team? How do I spend time with you? And so
Uh-huh.
I
That's
get
right.
it. And
That's
reps
right.
that are offended by those no's or don't get it, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of the wrong space if you don't understand that.
Yes, I could not agree more. And I would say the do's would be Revit symbols. So definitely tell them about the Revit symbols or idea starters or whatever you have, because that can save designers so much time when they're drawing a space or creating renderings or whatever it may be. So that's a big one. And then
Okay, I have another dumb question for you. What is a Revit symbol? I don't know anything about that.
yes, so Revit is the program that a lot of architecture firms use to produce their construction documents. And oftentimes, I mean, they're drawing in Revit from the beginning of a project. A lot of times, some firms will use SketchUp to start conceptually and then transition into Revit. But when you have Revit symbols, that's basically like for Haworth, we have lots of, I mean, we sell furniture. So we have all different types of furniture. And there are Revit symbols, which would be like, let's just take our poppy chair, for example. We have a 3D model that's built and created for Revit that
Okay.
if you're creating your furniture plan in Revit, you can pull that poppy symbol from our website and use it in your plan.
Okay.
And
That
since it's
makes
3D, if you drop a view and you want to study the space or you're trying to create a rendering for a client, then it'll show up in 3D as well. And you can apply finishes to it and just make it look how you want it to look.
interesting. Okay. And that's probably why I haven't run into it in the past because flooring is probably pretty simple in that regard. But I can see if you have a
Yes.
desk, it makes a difference if it's 60 inches long or 80 inches long or whatever. And yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
that makes
for
sense.
for your world, I would grab images from your website to create the finish on the floor or the wall or whatever. And then
Yeah.
when you have that image, you can save it and it'll show up in your renderings. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
mhm.
Okay, cool. And I'm just unashamedly asking these questions selfishly just so I
That's
can learn
great.
more about. I'm
What we're
always
here
looking for
for.
things I could do better. So, what were some of the other do's, the things that you wanted to be sure to do?
Just truly be a support and do my job well so that there's not additional work on the designers. We're here as their consultants to do our job. I mean, my job now is furniture, and so I want to do the furniture well so that they don't have to worry about it. And of course, they can be as involved as they want to, but if they don't have time to look up certain product types or ideas or whatever, then I want to do that for them so that again I'm saving them time that they can be spending elsewhere. So that's another do. It's frustrating when you feel like you've hired a consultant and then you end up having to maybe even do more work because they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
So I never want to be that person.
Yep. Yeah, I was talking with somebody yesterday about wood flooring and she said, "I'm sorry to just ask you all these to be bugging you with all these questions." And I said, "Look, you are not bugging me. This is my job and
Yes.
I don't expect everybody to be a wood flooring expert. That's why you call me. You have to think about furniture and lighting and building
Yes.
codes and all this. All I
Yes.
have to think about is flooring. And so if I didn't know a little bit more about it, I wouldn't be doing my job.
Exactly. And you
Yeah.
can make them look good by sharing your knowledge with them because then they can take it back to their client and educate them. So,
Yeah, for sure. Well, on the other side of things, what are some maybe some misconceptions that designers may have, and probably specifically newer interior designers about working with reps that maybe they should keep in mind? And maybe new folks, maybe people that aren't new folks, but just some things after sitting on both sides of the fence that you've seen.
yes. So I have been surprised at how lonely it can be to be a rep
Mm,
because when you're on the design side and you see reps, typically it's social. It's like you're here for lunch and learn, or you're bringing breakfast, or you're doing a happy hour, or whatever it may be. But when now being on this side, maybe it's because I was used to working in an office every day where I had whoever right behind me or next to me that I could bounce ideas off of. Now, technically being a remote position and having a home office, I really missed that part. And again, just being a designer, didn't realize that it could be that way. So that's the first one that jumps to my mind. And then also there's just a lot of computer work, like office work that you have to do on this side, tracking certain things and lots of email correspondence, which isn't bad. It's just, again, you're not just out and about all the time.
it's not all happy hours and fun
Exactly.
lunches. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You have people that you're reporting to that need something that they can look at, which means that you have to be plugging in that data for them to see.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes,
Turns out it is an actual job. Yeah.
it sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, there's a lot to it for sure. I mean, tons of moving parts and pieces, and just in the furniture world, there's so many different product types, and you want again to be an expert on furniture if that's what you're doing, or you, Brandon, want to be an expert on flooring or wall tile or whatever it may be. And so there's a lot to learn in that to try and do that job well and make sure that you truly are being a resource to the people you're serving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing to be a resource for people that are completely new to a product. It's another thing to be a resource for people that have been specifying furniture for 20 years. There's a
Yes.
steep learning curve to
Yeah,
actually be able to add some value to that conversation.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very, very true. And you can get into the nitty-gritty details of one specific product when you've got hundreds and hundreds of products.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
and the logistics of where it's coming from and things
Mhm.
like that as well. That's always part of the equation is, maybe these two products are very similar, but one of them I know is going to be available much more quickly or much more consistently or something like that. And
Mhm.
I know that that's true in your world as well. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of a calculus problem with figuring out a good solution sometimes. So,
That's right. And that in particular can feel very fluid because we're always trying to improve our processes. So maybe a product used to be made this way, but now it's made a different way because we can get it quicker or it's more sustainable or whatever it may be. So it's ever evolving, which makes it exciting, that you're always learning new things and always trying to improve. But just because you learned it a year ago doesn't mean it's the same today.
yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
lots to
usually
keep up
not.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's usually not. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Um, That's great. What kind of advice would you give designers or folks? And again, I keep saying designer and rep. I know that there's a lot of folks like you that
Yes,
are
I
designers that are also reps.
understand.
So I'm just forgive me, but yeah, I'm not trying to make a false distinction there. But what
Yeah.
advice would you give designers in terms of building relationships and spending time with reps and things like that versus juggling all the other stuff that they have on their priority list? And I know you and I are biased because we're reps at this point, but I think that it's still helpful for people to hear.
Yeah, certainly. I would say to the point or to the extent to which you're comfortable, let your reps help you and communicate as clearly as you can with them, even if that communication is, hey, I want this, whatever. This is my vision for this project, or I want this particular product on this project. But at this point, it's so early in the game, I don't have all the information. If that's what you need to communicate, then that's fine. But I would just say the communication piece can be very important on both sides and can end up really helping the designer and the rep. And then when you get to a point where you can hand it over to your furniture dealer or whoever it may be, then again, like I said, let them help you, because their job is to be the expert on whatever service, like whether that's again flooring, wall covering, furniture, lighting, whatever it is. And so hopefully they truly are, and they could give you information that you may not have learned otherwise had you not allowed them in. So I would definitely say that, because I think that can be a huge time saver for designers and ultimately can make the project even end up better because of it. And then also, I think reps do work really hard to try and give fun experiences or activities or lunch and learns or whatever it may be. And so just acknowledging that is always helpful. And coming to IIDA events.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing with IIDA. The board works really hard to try and create some beneficial opportunities for designers. And so when they show up, it makes it all worthwhile, and hopefully the designers end up benefiting from it too.
Yeah. 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 I think that there's just, and it's a theme in most of the episodes of this podcast, but I just believe that we were designed for community, and it's so powerful to be able to be known and seen, and IIDA and AIA and things like that. It's just so it's like the Cheers song. It's just nice to be somewhere where people know your name, And I think
It
that's
really is.
yeah.
Yes. And I would say, even for any designer listening who is newer to Birmingham or new, like just graduated or whatever, when I first moved here, I knew no one in the design community. And so I went to every IIDA event that I possibly could just to meet people. And that has been, I mean, through the years now, such a life-giving thing for me, and has brought incredible community that I wouldn't have had I not been willing to show up to the event not knowing anybody. And not to say that that's fun, because that's, a lot of people don't like being in that position.
Yeah.
But over time, you get into it what you get out of it what you put into it. And again, when I think about my life in Birmingham, one of the first things that comes to my mind is the design community and how thankful I am for it. And again, I wouldn't have that if I hadn't been willing to go, like to show up and get to know people. So
Yeah. Yeah. It just takes work. We all want the good friendships and the good community, but ultimately you've got to make the decision of, okay, am I going to show up to the event and try to talk to somebody,
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Another thing, and I would say this for designers that are working with reps, and you tell me if you disagree or not, but a lot of times reps have a good read on all the other firms in town in terms of culture and things like that. And I think it's helpful for designers if they're thinking about making a career change or something like that. A lot of times those reps, especially the ones that have been in the market for a while, can be really helpful there,
Oh
and
yeah, absolutely. That's actually how I got my job at KPS, funny enough.
there you go. Yeah.
was I
And I
was
didn't know
working
that.
in Yeah, I was working in St. Louis, like I mentioned earlier, and I gave my resume to the Maharam rep in St. Louis, and then I got a call from KPS, who, to be honest, I'd never heard of. And I didn't even find out how they got my resume until Donna, my old boss, was offering me the job. And I finally was like, "How did you find me?" And she said, "My husband's the Maharam rep, and he got your resume from the St. Louis Maharam rep." It's like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
That is funny. Yeah.
So
But that
I
really is how it
definitely agree.
works.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, reps are very, very plugged in. And I think designers will open up to reps oftentimes and just say, "Hey, if you hear of anything, let me know. I'm looking around." So
Yeah. 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 That's funny. That's really funny that you had actually experienced that. I had no idea when I was
yeah.
saying that.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. Well,
Yep.
if there are designers that are looking or that are listening to this and they're thinking, "Hey, I've thought about being a rep," how would you encourage them to think about that decision? What are some things that they should probably be aware of, things that they should probably think about? What kind of advice would you give them?
I would say, first of all, they're more than welcome to reach out to me if they want
Okay,
to talk
there
to
you go.
someone who has been on both sides. So that's the first thing. But also think about what you're looking for. Like, what would it take for you to move to the sales side in terms of like what type of company or what type of product would you like to sell? And then also, what are some things within that company that are sort of non-negotiables? Because I think that kind of helps weed out some manufacturers or whatever, some companies, just if you kind of have those things all sorted through in your head. And I would also say the grass is not always greener. And that's true for moving to other firms too. Like
Yeah.
that's just true for any any transition that you're considering. So I think sometimes change can sound fun and new and exciting, but oftentimes too, I think that you can be in a really good place and maybe not realize it just because it's your day to day and you kind of take it for granted. So yeah, that's what I would say is just kind of think about like, what do I really want? What do I want my day to day to look like? What do I want my future to look like? And what am I hoping to accomplish? Kind of like your personal mission, if you will. And then is the company going to align to that or not?
Yeah. Yeah, and also there's a lot of, when you're transitioning from working on the design side of things to the sales side of things, I could imagine that being a difficult transition, going from I'm accountable to creating a product over here, and
Mhm.
over here I'm accountable for developing business and producing revenue and things like that.
Right.
Um, how has that transition been for you? Because I could see that being tough.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a blessing and a curse because in some ways it's been freeing to be like, okay, it's not all on me. Like
Mm,
I'm not the one that's physically building this product. Whereas on the design side, oftentimes I was the one coming up with the design and producing it and, all of that, being in touch with the contractors on site weekly or whatever it was. Whereas now, being on this side, like you said, my primary goal is business development. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I really struggled sitting at my desk a lot while I was on the design side. I used to go hang out with one of my friends every day before work because she struggled too. And we just needed more interaction. So we would
yeah.
get together at Railroad Park in the mornings. But and then eventually I kind of moved into more business development at KPS, which I really liked. But anyway, um, yeah, I would say when you're focused on the business development side, your goal is to bring the work in and then you're still a part of the project, but you're not the one that's touching all of the like the actual production. And that's why I said it's a blessing and a curse because it takes a lot of pressure off of like, okay, this isn't all on me, but sometimes you feel like you're a little bit powerless. Like there's only so much I can do here. And I wish I could just go fix it, but I can't like drive up to or fly up to Holland, Michigan and go work in the factory. That would make things worse, actually.
Yeah, there's
So,
there's been plenty of times where, especially somebody that knows how to drive a forklift, I've wanted to go to the factory and drive a forklift.
yeah.
It's like we need to get this going, especially
Yeah.
over the last few years.
Yeah.
But, yeah, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I
Yeah.
could see that
Just
being a kind of a tough transition in some different ways, and that's one thing I would say as well. Um, if you're thinking about being a rep, connecting with a company that's going to make that onboarding process smooth as possible. It's kind of,
Mhm.
there's a lot of companies out there that you can say, yeah, I'd like to be a rep. And it's more of, you just kind of get thrown into the deep end and it's, hey, go figure it out, which doesn't sound like it's been your experience at all at Haworth, just from previous conversations. But
Mhm.
I would just encourage people to remember that working on the design side of things, it is a different job than working on the
Mhm.
rep side of things in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And if you've never done it before, you've got to approach it like, okay, I've got to learn sales now, not
Yeah.
just design and materials and things like that.
That's right. Yes, the onboarding process is so, so important for sure. And I mean, working for a company where, first of all, there is an onboarding process,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's
then
question number one. Do you
also,
have an onboarding process? And then what
yes,
is it like? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I would say making sure that part of the onboarding is in-person training. I mean, maybe that's just my personality, but post COVID, I think a lot of onboarding and training has become virtual, which there's certainly a time and place for that. But if it's not supplemented with in person trainings as well, I just don't think it's as easy to retain the knowledge because you can only watch so many videos.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah. And a lot of those are not the most engaging videos that you'd ever watch. So
exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, again, maybe it's just my personality, but sitting at home or even in a coffee shop by myself watching videos all day, like it's not very fun for me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Or probably anybody that's a rep. Most folks
yeah.
that are excited about being out as a sales rep are probably not
Yeah.
super jazzed up about watching a bunch of videos.
Uh-huh.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like there's a continuum of company ways you can be a rep. Like you can own your own company or agency and do that. And that's probably the least structure, but the most opportunity. And then there's kind of a middle
Mhm.
ground where, anybody that works with South Cypress knows we're a super small entrepreneurial kind of company. And so we
Right.
don't have a great rep onboarding process yet. That's
Uh-huh.
something that I would like to build for as we grow our team.
Mhm.
But if you get energy from there not being an answer to the question and having to figure it out, maybe that's a
Yes.
good place. And then there's also companies that have been in business for a long time. They know the drill and they
Mhm.
can really come alongside you and help you learn how to be successful. And,
Mhm.
I don't know. I've seen reps that and maybe they didn't start on the design side, but just reps in general that are misaligned with the company that they're working with. And maybe they want a ton of structure and they don't have
Mhm.
it, or maybe they get frustrated by the structure and they feel like they're being micromanaged. And I think
Yes.
it's like, you just got to acknowledge, okay, what is my personality like? What is my age and stage of life? And then
Mhm.
which company fits that. So
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of goes back to your other question of what should people consider if they're thinking about coming on this side. Again, is like just kind of doing some personal reflection, which I feel so silly saying that, but
it's true though.
yeah, it just gives you, I think, a measuring stick to use when you're considering jumping, whether that be from design into sales or from one firm to another firm. They're just, when you're interviewing, if they want you, they're going to put their best foot forward and make themselves seem like the best place to work ever. And
Yeah.
so if you are able to stay grounded and say, like, these are my non-negotiables, and I'm going to check to see if this is in line. Because if it's not, I mean, I would say, especially on the sales side, like, you're not going to feel good selling something that you don't believe in.
No.
At least, at least I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, I think
And
that's
that's not a good
very
strategy if you plan on being around for a while.
important. Yes,
You can burn bridges in
completely.
a hurry. So,
That's right. Yeah. And who wants to do that?
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, we're coming up on close to an hour here. Um, and so is there anything in particular that you'd like to talk about with this transition that we haven't already hit on, or anything going on with IIDA or Haworth that you'd like to promote or talk about?
I would just say again, please, anyone feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if they contact you to talk to me, or however you want to do that. I'm glad to
If they
share my
do, I'll get them
email.
connected with you. Yeah.
Okay. Or my cell phone or whatever it needs to be, because I just, I again have such a heart for interior design as a profession. That's why I'm on the board, and why I became an interior designer, and just want to be a resource as much as I can. And Haworth is very, very much in support of that. I would say the majority of the territory sales managers, which is what I am, have a background in design. And so they really value that, and they want me to support the industry. So I'm
That's
happy to
awesome.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge benefit that and value that you bring to the table. That there's a lot of times that as a guy like me that I'm not an interior designer. That's never more apparent than when I'm helping somebody pick out colors or something like that. Um, and there's a lot of times where I think, man, if I was a designer, that sure would be helpful, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I can see why they prioritize that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's important. And you're still a great rep, so don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Of
I
course.
tend to err on the side of just being the nerd about the products. You know, how's it going to perform? How am I going to
Yes.
get it? What's the difference? You know, and
Yes.
that's that's probably another thing with being a rep is everybody's different. And
Uh-huh.
I'm going to approach things differently than you do and different than other people do. And that's okay, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's good that we
Yeah.
all, can kind of make it what we want and need it to be, depending on who we're working for and what our personality is and background and all of that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Well, good. Well, I'm trying to end these interviews by asking what's something that's bringing you joy in this season of life. And it could be something professional. It could be a fun vacation that you took. It could be a cool project that you're working on, but just what's something that you're looking forward to or that's bringing you joy in this season of life.
mhm. So I mentioned earlier that my husband is a resident now, and you mentioned that we just had a baby. So I would say what's bringing me the most joy these days is when John gets home at a good time, well, before Ren is super fussy and ready to go to sleep, and we get to hang out as a family, the three of us. It's really sweet time. And maybe because it's not something we get to do every night, I'm able to enjoy it even more, and it brings me more joy. But that happened 2 nights ago, and it's just the three of us all night, and it was just such a happy thing. We're like, we don't want Ren to go to bed. It can't be time yet. We all need to keep hanging out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
That's
bringing lots of
awesome.
joy. And she's learning to laugh, and that's just like the most fun thing to me
Oh
too,
man.
because she doesn't quite know how to do it. So it's hilarious when she tries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
lots of fun.
awesome. Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that so much. It's so easy to skip over that stuff. You know, when you're thinking about life and you're thinking about, okay, what's good right now? The simplicity of, yeah, the three of us sitting here as a family and
Yes.
enjoying each other. But man, that I feel like that's the stuff that when you're, 85 years old and you're looking back
Oh
at your
yeah.
life that is going to be significant, you know.
Yes.
Um, and
I
so
agree. I mean, that's something I've really tried to focus on in this season that is difficult, is just gratitude, like for the mundane things, even. Like,
yeah,
I'm just thankful that we're here together, that we're healthy, we have a roof over our head, just
yeah,
those little things that we really are fortunate to have, but we often look over in the day to day, and I certainly look over them plenty too.
yeah,
But
yeah. That's we all do. We all do. But it's just a matter of trying to be intentional about pushing back against that, you know. And
yes.
yeah, but I love the answer to that question. And her learning how to laugh and things like that. There's so much that that's coming, her crawling and walking and playing and it's just I've got a 4-year-old and I just feel like
Yes,
it does get a little bit more challenging, but it also
imagine.
just
Yeah.
keeps being more and more fun, I think. And
Yes.
so it's there's a lot of other things like those laughs that's coming. So
Yes. Can't wait. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't want to wish this away, but also looking forward to just watching her continue to grow and develop. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Fun times
Well,
ahead.
yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, Liz, again, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a thing or two as well. And so thanks for
Good.
giving me some advice. And I think that other folks that are listening will too. So and if you're listening to this and you made it this far, thanks so much for listening to our conversation. And I hope that it was enjoyable and helpful. And if you can think of anybody that you think would be a great guest on the podcast, I'd love to hear about it. And so definitely send them my way. I'm looking for folks that are deeply connected with the design community. And so if you know somebody that fits that bill and you might like to hear them talk about something specific, definitely let me know. I want to keep doing this. We've got let's see, in addition to this, I've got 2 others on the docket that are either already recorded or will be recorded soon. And personally, I just enjoyed it a lot and want to keep doing it. So and that's true for you as well, Liz. If you know of anybody that you think would be a great guest, I'd love to hear about it. And definitely any listeners as well. So but anyway, thank you, Liz. Thank you for the folks that are listening. And yeah, I'll look forward to joining you next time.